Thank you everyone for turning up today live to do this. I know we're competing with an Oilers game, so I do appreciate those who turned up. There will be a recording sent out for those of us who missed it. So I want to welcome you all to our virtual workshop today on repurposing invasive plants. My name is Lori Frankham. I'm the engagement coordinator with the Central Kootenai Invasive Species Society, and I live, work, and play in Roslyn, British Columbia, which is the unceded territory of the Ktunaxa, the Silks, the Secwepemc, and the Sinixt First Nations people. So what we're going to do today in this hour is we're going to start off with some introductions, and then we'll do an Invasive Species 101, followed by some best management practices. We'll do some plant ID and control, and then end with a plant repurpose demo, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A and some discussion. So before we begin, just a couple little housekeeping items. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, I would appreciate if you just stay on mute and the video off while we're giving the presentation. If any questions do come up, we're going to save all the questions to the very end. But if you can please use the chat box for any questions or comments for Rachel or myself. This workshop is being recorded and it is going to be available online. So you can just sit back and relax. No need to take notes unless you really want to. As well, we're going to send out a follow-up email with a copy of the recording and as well as some resources that we're going to mention in this workshop. I do kindly ask that you fill out a survey. We are a nonprofit. We do rely heavily on people's feedback to improve our programming, but also to help with funding applications. And to say thank you, your name will get put in a hat to win a CKISS prize, including a specialized tea made by Tilia Botanicals themselves with a really nice tea blend. Okay, so a little bit about the organization that I work for. So the Central Kootenai Invasive Species Society, we're a nonprofit organization with a mission to mitigate the impacts of invasive species on the RDKB areas A and B, as well as all the area RDCK. So if you're joining us outside of those regions, there's probably a similar organization to ourselves who are doing similar work. So my co-presenter today is Tilia Botanicals. So this is a beautiful business located in Creston, BC. I was just there a couple of days ago picking up a few items. So they specialize in offering handcrafted herbal products, natural remedies, and holistic wellness services. The business focuses on using local source organic ingredients to create around your products, including teas, tinctures, salves, and skincare items. In addition, they also offer workshops such as this and educational programs on herbal medicine and natural health practices. So today we're joined by Rachel Beck. So Rachel, give a little wave there. She's a medicinal herbalist and she's going to join us today. So thanks, Rachel, for taking some time out, and we look forward to your demo near the end of my little chat here. Okay, so the invasive species 101 part. So before we do invasive species 101, we have to talk about the definition of a native species. So a native species is a species that's, evolved here. It's been part of the native ecosystem for thousands of years. It's from BC or the Kootenai area, and they serve some sort of purpose. So here's common ones that you may have seen in your neck of the woods. And these are plants that serve as great habitat, food for wildlife, and they just are part of a really healthy ecosystem. On the flip side, an invasive species is an organism that causes economic harm. So here's a picture of a wildfire. Definitely, it creates some wildfire fuels. It can increase our taxes. It can make our food costs go up. It definitely costs a lot of money to manage. There's also environmental impact. So here's some Western painted turtles that got impacted by some invasive knapweed that grew close by. So invasive species are the #2 reason for habitat or for biodiversity loss worldwide. And then lastly, we talk about some social impacts. These can be health impacts. So this is a picture of someone who came into contact with giant hogweed, an invasive plant that is phototoxic, can also ruin some of our recreation fun. I know a lot of us in the Kootenays love getting outdoors, biking and camping and swimming and enjoying the trails. And when invasive species move into some of our favorite recreation areas, it kind of takes away that fun and it doesn't make it as enjoyable anymore. So what makes a plant invasive? So we're going to talk about plants specifically in this workshop, and it's important to know these characteristics to make sense of why we're recommending some of these best management practices. So the first is a lot of them are prolific seed producers, meaning they produce a lot of seeds. So for example, purple loosestrife can produce up to 300,000 seeds per year. So I'm just admitting people in at the same time as presenting. So when I pause, that's what I'm doing. As well, they have a really, really long-lasting seed bank, meaning that dormant seeds can come back and grow years later. So knapweed, for example, is quite well established here in the Kootenays, and those seeds can stay viable for 8 to 15 years. Invasive species really love disturbed soils. They can quickly establish and they thrive on disturbed soil. So knotweed, for example, all it takes is 1/7 of a gram of knotweed to create a brand new infestation. And lastly, and probably what makes these plants be able to do so well and thrive, is they lack any natural predators because they didn't evolve here. They're not part of the natural ecosystem or food chain. So leafy spurge, for example, can cause sores around the mouth. So animals just avoid it. And when there's nothing to control these plants, they end up taking over natural areas. So we're going to talk about how invasive species can spread by you going out and harvesting plants for the purpose of repurposing them into salves or teas or things like that. So the things to keep in mind of when you're out there that you might be contributing to the spread of invasive species. So one is invasive species can hitch a ride on you. So on your clothing, on your equipment, on your pet, things like that. So they can attach it and get carried to a new area. Next, when we're out digging out plants and removing things, we're disturbing the soil. And like I said, with that characteristic, they love disturbed soil. So we're out there, we're disturbing soil. Sometimes we pick the wrong time of year to go out and harvest these plants. So harvesting plants in seed is a bit of a no-no, and it can definitely contribute to its spread. Transporting plant debris and materials uncontained. So you go to one area, you want to bring material home, you put it in the back of your pickup truck. If it blows out, it could definitely start a new infestation somewhere. We also see improper disposal. So here's a picture of sort of an illegal dump site with some plant debris in there, amongst some other things. So if you don't properly dispose of the plant material that you're not using for repurposing, you can definitely contribute to its spread. So if you are growing any invasive plants on your property to use them for medicinal or you're going to eat them, by not containing them or in your garden, you're risking the chance of them kind of jumping that garden fence and ending up in a natural area. So we're not saying go out and don't harvest these plants. We're totally okay. We actually love the idea of people going out and finding a patch of St. John's wort or something that's, really established here in the Kootenays and harvesting it and repurposing it. We just want to make sure you're doing it in a responsible way, and I'm going to teach you that. So there's 6 best management practices that you can follow to ensure that the actions that you're taking isn't contributing to the problem. You're actually helping the issue out by following these best management practices. So the first one, and probably the simplest one, is keeping clean. So arriving clean and leaving clean is really, really important because, like I said, they love to kind of hitchhike onto you, your animal, your vehicles. So if you just keep that in mind of leaving a site nice and clean and not, probably don't want these invasives even on your own property. That's a really important. If there's one thing that you follow in all this, that would probably be the most important one. Next one is where you're storing your equipment or parking your own vehicles, just ensuring you're doing that away from any invasive plants. So learning how a plant reproduces is really important. This is going to help you figure out timing. So some plants grow or reproduce in lots of different ways. So knapweed, for example, only reproduces by seed. Knotweed, like I said, like a fragment of that plant can reproduce a whole new plant. And then you have some plants that reproduce both ways. So they can do underground rhizomes, creepers, stems, and also by seed. So knowing how a plant, educating yourself on how a plant reproduces is going to help you figure out the timing and also help you figure out how to properly harvest those plants. So the next one is is to identify invasive species present at your site. So here are some common ones in the Kootenays, burdock, and invasive daisies. And once you've identified those, you basically want to start working or traveling to the area that's the least infested first before moving to a different area. Because again, you just don't want to have anything hitchhike onto you and bring to a new area. You do want to avoid areas with invasive plants in seed. Again, we just don't want them hike onto you and going to a new area. So doing your best to try to find plants that aren't in seed is a really great best management practice to follow. So when you're out harvesting plants, also knowing what plants are native is really important. And we do ask that you leave any of the native or desirable vegetation intact. It is really hard for invasive plants to come in and move into a well-established native plant population. And again, you know, when we're out there digging and cutting, we are definitely creating some soil disturbance, but we're going to try to minimize it as much as we can. So that could like replacing divots or using smaller tools and just taking what you need to repurpose and not anymore. So once you go, you want to monitor these disturbed sites, and this might be more so on your own personal land, because whenever you disturb an area, it's kind of like rolling out a welcome mat saying invasives, move on in. So definitely want to keep your eyes on that disturbed um, area to ensure that no new invasive species have kind of come in and started to grow. And even better yet, the dream is to restore these disturbed areas with native species. So seeding or planting. With native species or just making sure you're replanting with non-invasive ornamentals if you're choosing on your own property. Now, if you're, going and harvesting, along a trail or somewhere out on public land, we want to make sure that you're containing any plant parts before you transport it back to where you're going to be creating your tinctures or salves or things like that. So putting them in bags, bring a tote with you, a container, Ziploc bag. If you're, harvesting a large quantity, you can also think about using tarps or tonneau covers to securely secure that plant material so it's not ending up in places it doesn't belong. And then disposing properly is really important. So any of the plant material that you're choosing not to repurpose, really, really key to dispose of it properly. So here within the RDCK and RDKB, if you put any plant material into clear bags and bring it to a transfer station or a landfill, you won't get charged any tipping fees, which is really great. But they do have to be in clear bags. They don't want you smuggling in household garbage is the reason for that. And the other option is just to bring your own bags and put it in your own household garbage and curbside pickup, whatever where you live, takes care of curbside pickup if you have it. Like I said, larger quantities, you can use what we call the burrito method. So this is a large patch of Scotch broom that got mechanically removed. And because it's so challenging to bag some things that are really, really large quantities, then we use what's called the burrito method, where we sort of fold it all up, create a burrito, secure it tightly, and you do up the contact. This is only if you're going to bring it to a landfill. You can't bring loose materials to a transfer station, and you do need to contact the facility in advance. And information on that is going to be on our website, and I'll send it in the email as well of who to contact for that. So I did mention that it's important to know how plants reproduce, and it's for this reason. So some plants that spread only by seed, some of that plant material could just be left on site to compost on site if it's harvested before the flower, before it's gone to seed. Avoid putting invasive plants, even if it has seeds, no seeds, in your own backyard compost. That's something that we don't recommend. Burning is not necessarily the most effective disposal method. Some species seeds are still viable after fire. So if you do choose to burn any of your invasive plants, just again, really good idea to monitor that site and just make sure that nothing is growing in that area. But not recommended, but we understand that that is a way that a lot of people get rid of some plant debris. Okay, and then gardening responsibly, knowing what you grow. So just so everyone knows, there is no law in BC regulating the sale of noxious invasive plants. We still find invasive plants for sale in garden centers all the time. So just because it's for sale in a garden center doesn't mean that it's safe to grow. We do have some great resources, and again, I'll send this in the email. We have a Grow Me Instead program, and also an Eco Garden plant list that really tells you some safe plants to pick, so taking some of the guessing game out of it. And if you spot any invasive plants at your favorite local greenhouse, we definitely encourage you to reach out to them. Say, hey guys, these are invasive. There's a plant-wise program that they can join to ensure that they're not selling invasive species at garden centers. And definitely share with Claire. So if you do have invasive species that you're cultivating at home for your own personal use, we just really ask that you not share those and encourage others to grow them. Do not transplant plants from roadsides, gravel pits, or other disturbed areas because there's a high chance they're invasive. And just a note that you shouldn't be digging out large quantities of native plants from undisturbed areas either. So gardening responsibly. So again, it's not lost on us that some people are cultivating some invasive plants for medicinal and edible use. If you are going to do this, we just really want to make sure that you're containing that plant in your backyard and it's not going to escape. So you can use some physical barriers for that. Definitely, we want to be monitoring regularly. So just making sure that it's looking for signs of it spreading. You want to bag and dispose of invasive plant material in the garbage, not your compost. Cleaning tools. So if you're, using tools at one for an invasive plant, just cleaning it before you do it, and don't let invasive plants go to seed. And how you do that is you deadhead flowers, so regularly cutting off the flowers before they go to seed, pruning any seed pods, mowing or cutting back, removing roots, or covering the ground can definitely help suppress seed germination. So another best management practice when you are out enjoying nature is reporting any invasive species that you see to us. So you can do this by submitting a report. You can email us, you can call us. There is an app you can put on your phone, top right-hand corner there, that you can download on your phone and submit them really easily. There's also a great tool called iNaturalist that is going to help you identify these plants. And we do go through the list that people, the observations, and we have been able to identify some higher priority plants. I don't necessarily encourage this as a reporting tool, but it's great if you guys are out doing that and you want to upload your observations to iNaturalist. We do look at it and it's a great tool to help you identify plants. Okay, there's a little bit of note about removing invasive species on crown land or municipal land or roadsides. It's not necessarily legal, it's encouraged, and just the rules may vary by method and location. So on public land, manual removal is usually okay. If you are using, tools or equipment, you may have to look for some permission. And just be wary to never remove any invasive plants from protected areas. So parks, there's definitely lots of extra rules. So ensure that you're not doing any of this work in protected areas, even if they are invasive. So before you start, it's just a really good idea to know the land. So confirm it's crown land, municipal land, not private or protected. Check regulations with your local ministry or forest mission. You can even reach out to us, CKISS, to find out. And then also follow those best management practices that I just mentioned. Okay, so we are going to move on to invasive plant and responsible harvesting tips. So Rachel has going to point out, we picked 4 plants for this presentation of some common ones, some that are in flower now. So we're going to kind of go through those 4. There's a whole big list of invasives out there, but just given time, we're just going to go through 4 of them. So the first one we're going to chat about is mullein. So mullein can be identified with bright yellow flowers. They produce 20 to 50 centimeter spike-like shape. So very common plant here in the Kootenays. It grows quite tall, so 0.3 to 0.2 meters tall. Rosette leaves are gray-green, 5 to 40 centimeters long with a woolly, hairy, or felt-like feel. I've heard some people call this nature's toilet paper. If you ever get stuck out there with the toilet paper, this might be a good one. Um, so how does mullein reproduce? So again, this is a good best management practice is knowing how it reproduces. So it's a biannual, meaning it flowers, sets seed, and dies during its second year of growth. It is a high seed producer, so a single plant may develop as many as 240,000 seeds. And I found this stat really fascinating. Super long seed banks. So seeds can stay viable for more than 100 years. So that's why this plant is so hard to get rid of. So how to responsibly harvest it. So you want to dig out before it's seed set. When digging, sever the root below the soil surface. And this is just a general rule for all invasive plants. The easiest time to do it is dig when the soil is moist after a rainfall, especially if you're trying to get to like the tap root. Like I know that's a part of burdock that you want to get to, but doing it when it's moist is going to make it a lot easier for you to get everything out and create less soil disturbance. Okay, the next one that Rachel's going to talk about is wormwood. So it's a woody stem and can get 3 to 4 feet tall. The leaves are deeply lobed, covered in fine silky hairs that give a plant a grayish appearance. And the flower stalks appear at each upper node and produce numerous yellow flower heads. So how does this one reproduce? So it's a perennial that reproduces primarily through seed, but it can also spread through short roots. It is also a prolific seed producer, with seedlings emerging anytime from late spring to early fall. So how to harvest. You want to carefully dig out plant prior to seed set and if possible, dig out all those short roots. Okay, the next one is Dame's Rocket, which is fully flowering right now here in some areas of the Kootenays. So the flowers are quite pretty. This is definitely a plant that got introduced through the horticulture industry. So it has 4 petals, which are often pink, purple, or white. The leaves are dark gray, hairy, and serrated. The lower leaves have short stems and wither when the plant flowers. The stems are upright, often branch, and they range from 1/2 meter to 1 meter tall. So how does Dame's Rocket reproduce? It does not spread by rhizome or stolon, so it doesn't creep underground. It reproduces by seed. I have a typo there, I apologize. It can resprout from root crowns. So yeah, that's Dame's Rocket. So how to responsibly harvest Dame's Rocket. So best method is definitely hand pulling. If you want to bring like a knife or a trowel, we do find those garden forks quite handy for removing it. It's really good. So timing, you do want to remove the plant before they go to seed to prevent it spread. And if you are actually trying to eradicate Dame's Rocket in an area, persistence pays off. So don't be worried if you go back the following year and like there's so many more plants growing out, just because soil disturbance does make them regrow. But going back and repeat pulling is going to reduce that seed bank over time. That kind of goes with all invasive. It doesn't just take once to go out and try to eradicate. It's going to take numerous treatments if you're doing it mechanically. Okay, the last plant that we're going to focus on today is burdock. So again, this is one that you see a lot of it in the Kootenays. There's large heart-shaped or oval leaves with wavy edges. They look a lot like rhubarb, and the underside is whitish and woolly. So how do I de-burdock? So the flowers, that's a purple thistle-like flower head that blooms mid to late summer. Flower clusters at the end. And this is one that the first year it's a rosette, and then the next year is when a tall flowering stalk appears, and they can get quite tall as well, up to 2.5 meters tall. So you guys all might be familiar with these birds if you ever had to remove them from your hare or your dog or your horse. It's a pretty cool thing that this plant developed in order to disperse its seed pretty wide. So it creates these dry hooked burrs. And a little fun fact, this was the inspiration for Velcro. So yeah, they reproduce only by seed, and like I said, they easily attach to things to disperse pretty far. Okay, how to responsibly harvest. So one thing is to only harvest first year plants if possible. So choose plants in the rosette stage, low to the ground, no flower stalk. These are the first year and haven't produced any seeds yet. So you want to dig carefully and remove the whole root. It is a pretty big taproot, so warning that it is going to take a little bit of effort to get it out. You're definitely going to use a shovel or a fork to remove the entire taproot. This does kill the plant and prevents regrowth. Do not leave any plant pieces behind as they can sometimes resprout. So you want to avoid second-year plants. Don't harvest plants with flower stalks or birds that are already spreading seeds. And it'd be great if you're out there, if you can do the extra mile and bag and dispose of any birds safely. And this is one for sure. You want to make sure you're checking your clothing and your gear to ensure that none of these birds have hitched a ride to a new site. So those are the 4 plants. I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, who is going to now explain to us how we can repurpose these 4 plants.
Hello. Okay. It's hilarious because as you were talking, I'm pouring some burdock tincture into a jar for somebody. And as you were saying about how invasive it is, I was feeling a little guilty here, that I was going to use it, but I'm going to use it. And that's what's wonderful, isn't it? Is that I'm going to use it and it's not going to spread because if you harvest it, as you said, at the right time, it's absolutely perfect. So I'm going to show you guys now. I think I have all my stuff on now. To a few things. First off, I think you mentioned a really pretty flower. I don't know if you guys can see it up there. Can you fix the screen? Are you able to make it so that I'm full screened?
I was just looking into how to do that. So you just keep going and I will try
I'll
to
keep
figure
going,
that
you do
out.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So we were out earlier today and we picked some of this lovely, if I bring it right up, see, oh, there we go. So you guys can see it. This is Dame's Rocket. And we took it off the stalk already just for time's sake. But I wanted to show it to you because it is beautiful and it really does smell amazing. So people like it. I mean, they want to have it. And so basically, what I tell people when I'm talking to them about it, so if you're going to pick it, pick it just as it's going into bloom, take the tops off of it so it doesn't form a seed, and you can eat these. Most people don't know that, but these are edible. You can actually candy them and they're beautiful on like decorations on cakes, or you can put them in salads. They don't taste bad at all. The young leaves are really good. You can cook them in saute them like with a stir fry. You can use them in pesto. There's a lot you can use of them before you pull them out of the ground. So you're not wasting them by picking them. People just think it's nice to leave them around where I live here. They're everywhere. And people just leave them because they think they look beautiful. Well, every year we get more and more and more and more of them. And pretty soon it's going to choke out everything that is really valuable to the area. So you're definitely going to do that. But I'm going to show you a really nice trick with them. In the evenings, these beautiful flowers smell. So if you're going to pick them at night because that's when the smell is the best. So in the early evening, they put out that amazing smell. You're going to get a jar. You're going to get some wonderful Epsom salts or sugar, and you're going to put some in a jar, and you're going to take some of your flowers, put them in there like that. You're just going to keep layering it up until you have it full. And put quite a bit of the flour in there. Finish with your salt or your sugar. And it doesn't have to be Epsom salts. It can be any salt that you have, Himalayan, whatever you got. It's just fine. Put a lid on it. Shake it up really well. And I would tell you, if you can, shake it every day for usually about a week is what I live it. It won't go moldy. The salt will pull the moisture into it, so it's not going to go moldy. If you're concerned about the moisture, you can put a paper towel over it and then put the lid on it. In a week's time, you're going to have an absolutely beautiful bath salt. And this is really fun to make with kids because they get to learn about nature. You can take them out, you can show them these flowers. They come home and make this beautiful bath salt. You've pulled them out and you explain that they came to North America in the 1700s and they have spread everywhere. And so we don't really need this plant after all these years. They're spread enough. It's a fun little activity for kids. They love this kind of thing because then it smells in a week and they've learned about the plants. So, as I say, they're medicinal in that they help with coughs. You can make a tea out of them and they'll help you with coughs and chest. They're also really good for urinary tract issues, particularly if you're retaining fluids, and they're fairly safe. So you're not going to have to worry about if you're mixing them with something else, a medication, they're not likely to interfere. So there's one thing you can do with one of our lovely plants there. This plant we mentioned is wormwood. Now, wormwood is used for many things. says that if you've ever smelled wormwood, you know it's a very strong smelling plant. I really like the smell of it. I think it's quite neat. Lots of people don't, but it's a very lovely one, I think. And you can harvest it, cut it down so those little flowers don't tiny, and it has tiny little innocuous flowers, but they of course reproduce as well. Take it like this, and you can do many things. You can do medicine with it. But one of the things I tell people, I often hear, have you got anything for dealing with moths? You know, that in the fall, we get moths in a closet where our clothes are. Take a sprig like this of it, take some lavender if you have it, tie them together and put them in your closet. Moths don't like the smell of it at all, and they don't like the smell of lavender. So if you hang those in your closet, the two together, those two smells are really beautiful. So they'll make the closet smell really nice. You can put them in chests, drawers if you want. So just hang it to dry in your closet, and it'll help do that. So that's a simple little thing you can do. You can also, I found that mice don't like this plant either. So if you know where the mice are coming in, stick some in the hole, and they generally aren't very happy with you because they don't like the smell of it. Medicinally, very powerful medicine. It's a digestive herb. And we use it in teas, although a little bit bitter, just so you know, it's not one most people really like. But we use it in tinctures, which are alcohol extracts or glycerin extracts. And we use it for digestion, to get the digestive system working better. It works on your liver and your pancreas and your gallbladder, and it gets it moving better. Don't need very much of it, just a few drops, and it'll get it working. We also use it for parasites. It's one of the most popular one for parasites. It kills both the actual parasite itself and the larva and the eggs themselves. So it's a really, really good one. It's used as part of, we use it in our clinic here as part of a 6-week parasite cleanse for people, which is quite popular nowadays to do parasite cleanse. So it's one of the ones that we use. We also use it as a hair rinse for antifungal. It has antifungal properties. So a lot of people who get dandruff that may be fungal in nature, you can make a tea out of it and just rinse your hair with it, and it'll help if you've got really bad dandruff. It does a lot more than that, but I'm doing a crash course here for you guys, as you can tell. I'm just kind of throwing it out to you. Let's set those there. Now, I wanted to show you, we talked about mullein. We went out today, I sent my staff up and they went out harvesting. This is a first year growth. First year growth will not, it's not likely. Well, actually this one will produce at some point because it's a little bigger than first year. It's going to produce a stalk, but they haven't yet. So we have these lovely leaves. This is when we start to use it, this wonderful time before the stalk comes. We want the stalk, but we're going to use it now. This has some roots in it. I'm just going to pull this so you can see it. There's some roots down here in the bottom, quite deep. They're taproot. As this plant when it first comes up in the first winter into the first spring, so right now, I would be harvesting this. I don't know if I can break it off. I did. Yes. Okay. This part of the root here, there's some research to show that this contains enough what we call mucilage, which coats, to actually coat the vertebrae in the spine. So if you have things like slip discs or disc problems in general in your spine, this seems to act as a really good lubricant because it is so strong in that. And I've used it for people who also have issues with bone-on-bone knee pain. And it really, really lubricates. So if you're in that position, just making this into a tea. Just so you know, we are doing a handout afterwards, and I've put together information on making teas and making tinctures and making all these different things with them. So you will be able to hopefully do that, or you can contact me and I'll help you out. So this one here is super, super good for that issue. The leaves, this is undoubtedly the most effective thing you will ever have for your lungs. We use, I can't believe how many we have gone through, I think already 10 gallons and this year of this in a tincture form, and I don't know how many pounds and pounds and pounds of it in a dry form. It is the premier lung herb, and we use it for everything from coughs and colds to people who have chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases like asthma and emphysema and things like that. It really, really heals. And so I mean, if you have any of those things, this is the herb you absolutely have to have. And we often make it into cough medicines, or we make it into tinctures, and definitely teas. It's in a lot of our teas. Hopefully we're not going to experience a lot of forest fire smoke this year, but if we do, this is definitely one of the herbs you'd want to be using to keep your lungs feeling comfortable and moist during that time. It also is that moisture that's in it, that mucilage, that coating, will coat the esophagus and the stomach. So if you have an ulcer or GERD, the reflux disorder, this will also help that. So it'll soothe it completely. So it's definitely worth it. The flowers that come on the big stalks, those little flowers, we infuse in oil, and we use them for ear problems. Anyone who has an ear infection, it's very good for it. And this plant is also extremely good if you get mastitis. It helps. We often put it as a poultice, or else take it internally to help with any blocked lactation ducts. So you can use it for that. So as you can see, it's one of our kind of multi-purpose herbs. But as Lori said, this has a zillion seeds. So I tell people who are going out to harvest this, and we have lots of people who do it for us, I tell them to try and get that stalk off of there as quickly as possible. As soon as those flowers come out, cut the stalk down, take as many flowers as you can, and get rid of that stalk, because those seeds will drop and they will be everywhere. We have a poor woman out in an area near us who's called us out to try and harvest because she allowed that to happen. And what went from, you know, a garden bed to acres of mullein has happened for her. And it's very sad because it's taken over so much of her garden. So don't let those seeds get out. And the last one I'm going to show you is burdock. Lovely, lovely burdock. There's the root of the burdock, and there's the leaves of the burdock. Primarily in a medicinal capacity, we use the root and the seeds from those little burrs. The major part that we generally use is the root. But you may not know that the root is actually edible. It's quite good, actually, if you can let the plant be fairly big when you pick it, so kind of in the fall. They call it in Japan gobo, and it's a food, a bit like a potato that they eat. And I've cooked it myself, and it's really quite nice. But there's a key with it. If you're going to cook burdock root, you have to cook it twice. So you boil it till it's pretty well done. Then you strain the water off and put fresh cold water on and start it again. That pulls the bitter out, the last of that little bit of bitter. And then it's fine. And it truly tastes quite good. They actually make soda pop out of the root in some countries. So it isn't a horrible tasting one, but it is for us very, very powerful medicine. And if you are going to harvest it, know that you've got some amazing medicine in your hands. It's one we use for, it's part of a formula called the ESSIAC formula, which is used for cancers. And the reason this herb is in that one is because it is what we call a blood cleanser. It actually helps to remove waste materials from the blood by killing back any cells that are damaged. It completely finishes them off and excretes them from the body. It also is very good at regenerating cells. So if there's cellular damage, we're going to see it get better. It's very high in something called inulin, which is a fiber that we need in our body that can really help with our gut biome. And we now know so much about having a healthy gut biome. And so this is definitely one that you would want to consider if you have upset stomachs or problems with that, problems with your gallbladder, your liver, any of that, sluggish. This is a beautiful one to either have as a tea. It's quite pleasant. It's quite sweet. So it's not like some of my herbs I could give you are pretty wicked. They joke around here that I didn't go to the Mary Poppins School of Medicine because none of my medicine tastes good. But I'm not lying here. This isn't such a horrible one. Okay. It's one you could take as a tea and it wouldn't be awful. But it really is, if you can get this into your diet, you will notice very quickly that all of your routes of elimination are better. Your urinary tract excretes better. Your digestive tract excretes better. Your skin gets better. And I have people who've had like chronic headaches use this as a tea, and their headaches go away because they pulled waste material out of their body. And so that's, something to consider. We don't really use the leaves, although historically they often used to wrap butter in it, fold it up, and took it to market, and we use this to protect the butter. So it does have a role to play. I don't know that we need to do that now, but it does have a role to play. But primarily the seeds and the root. The root is the stronger. The seeds are pretty good for coughs and colds. So it's one of those. So there we are. Lori, do I have time enough to tell them about St. John's wort?
Yes, there's still 20 minutes, and then just as long as we leave some time for some questions, if people have questions at the end.
Okay, perfect. One of my staff is here, so I'm going to call her Courtney. Could you get me some St. John's wort so I can let them see? Somewhere buried in here, I have a glass of water. Here we go. Thank you. St. John's wort, some of you will have seen it before. St. John's wort is the little yellow flowers that Lori showed you at the beginning there. St. John's wort is a very controversial plant because we use it medicinally, and it's very important in our medicinal repertoire. But for a lot of people, it's concerning. It's concerning to the cattlemen in our area because when the cattle eat it, it can affect their skin. It can affect, they become photosensitive. So that is a problem to say. Right. And so I get it. I totally get where they're coming from, but we need it for medicine because it is really important. We use it for depression. We use it for mental health things in general, whether it be anxiety, sleep issues, a lot of that. We use it for, it is very specific to the herpes strain of viruses. So that could be shingles, that could be cold sores. It can, a range of things, chronic fatigue syndrome. So we like to use it for that. So it's important to us, but we need to respect that this is an invasive plant. And so how we deal with that is we go out and we cut it. So we take all those flowers. There's no way that that plant can reproduce then by seed. We've got them, and we're going to take care they're not going to get anywhere. And so I would encourage you to do that. In areas that we see there's a huge overabundance and that maybe near pasture land or whatever, we will take it out when we're finished. Knowing that there's a lot of other areas we can go to. There's a lot up some of the logging roads that we go up, and we're not as concerned because there's not livestock in that area. So just be really cognizant that that can happen. I am going to show you, I'm seeing if I have a glass. Quartz, can you give me a little glass, please? I want you to see the color of this. We take the flowers off when we pick them. And when you pick them, the way to know whether you're getting them at the proper time is your hand will be red. And I'll show you this. We put the flowers into water, into oil. In this case, it's olive oil. And after they've sat for a month, that's the color of it. It looks just like blood. And that tells you your St. John's wort is good oil. If you do that for a month and your oil is not that color, or if you do a tincture, an alcohol extract, and it is not red, then it's not good. So don't use it because you're not getting anything out of it. Also, if you are wanting to use it, please make sure you do it with fresh plant. It loses 75% of its efficacy once the plant is dry. So if you really want it to be effective, you want to do it that way. Okay, so some of the other things really quickly, very quickly that I'm going to show you we can do. We had a class here not long ago, and it was with the Bird Festival people. And we showed them how to make an oil, an infused oil by putting plant material into oil. And it's a really simple process that you can do. There's two ways. You can put dry plant material in it, cover it up, leave it, put a lid on it, call it good. It's fine. You can leave it for a month, give it a little shake ever so often, it'll be good. But if you're using fresh plant, you have to be more careful because there's water in that. Excuse me. There's water in these. So the plant, so generally we leave them to dry for at least a couple of hours, preferably overnight. We've got it ready, we cut it and get it ready and leave it overnight. And then we put them in here. I'm gonna get a cough drop. Corey, can you get me a cough drop? My apologies. 1 second, everyone. We're back. My allergies are kicking in because we've got pollen everywhere. Yes, I'm a herbalist who has a pollen allergy. It's pretty terrible. But I got behind and I didn't take what I need. So if you have the allergies, you need to take nettles. It's the #1 thing for allergies. So they're all over the place. They're kind of invasive weeds in their own manner, but they are very valuable. So if you do have this happen, you need to take some nettles. All right, back to our little oil. So what we did is we put oil over top of that herb, the sage that is actually fresh. But if you notice on the top here, I don't have a lid. I have cheesecloth. And that cheesecloth is there so any moisture can get out of this rather than a lid. If I put a lid on here, I'm going to have a swamp garden. In about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days, you'll notice it starts to stink. It has an awful smell. And then pretty soon you got mold on the top. So definitely you want to make sure that you have something that's going to let that air out, but keeps anything from getting in. So again, as we said, we have a handout. We'll tell you how to do all of those. But one of the things we then do is we take that oil after we've strained it off, and you can use it to make a range of very simple things at home for yourself. So the herbs that I've actually showed you can be really helpful. I showed you wormwood, and I showed you mullein, and I've showed you burdock, and I've showed you our lovely Dame's rocket. You could put all of those into one of these, a jar of oil, let it sit, and in a month's time, strain it off, and you can make a healing salve. That salve would be a really good all-purpose one because wormwood is really good for aching muscles. So you can put it on there. It's antifungal, antibacterial. It's going to kill germs in a cut. Mullein is very, very soothing to tissue and healing. It also helps with bruising. Burdock, again, helps to regenerate cells. So if you've damaged, like, you've cut yourself or bruised yourself badly, it'll start to heal it. And a lovely little Dame's Rocket, again, is very soothing, anti-inflammatory, and healing to the skin. You're going to have a little dynamo if you use all of those four plants to make something. And so making a salve is very easy. You would take this oil, once it's strained, you're going to add beeswax. If you're a vegan, you can go with candilia wax or camellia wax, any wax that you want that isn't beeswax. You're going to add those two together in a pot. You're going to mix it around until it's melted. And then you're going to pour it into a jar. We use dark jars like this. We pour it in. That's not full. We've been poking at it. And this is, its texture is like that. Let's see if I can get a big piece on it, like that on your, and you just massage it into your skin, wherever there's a bruise or a muscle ache. This would be a great one for just a massage for aches and pains after a straining day. So they're really simple things that you can make out of this. You don't have to discard them completely. You just have to make sure you don't let them spread everywhere. Because really, I hate to tell you this, we don't need this much mullein in the world. We really don't. And we don't need this much burdock in the world. It's all wonderful, but it's gotten out of hand. And we got a job to keep it in hand, but use what we can. Okay. So there we go, Lori. Your turn to tell them the rest of it.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. That is so much amazing information. And I do really encourage anyone that's in the Creston area or going through to definitely pop into this store. You'll just get lost and you're just a wealth of knowledge. So I really appreciate it. I've had a few items for my own aches and pains and sipping tea pleasure, and I can highly recommend it. So at this time, we have about 9 minutes. If anyone has any questions, we're a pretty small group, so don't be shy if you have any questions at all. Now is your time. We have, an expert sitting in front of us. So if you have any questions about what she has chatted about, let us know. So Erica has a few questions for burdock harvest. When is the best time to gather it, and what's the best age, aka are first year plants better than second year plants?
It's a biennial, so always your first year roots are well. That having said that, the first year root, what I mean by that is when it's starting to come up, but before it's actually put up the stalk, part of it is when your best time is. And so that's actually in the spring of the the year, because it's going to put its stalk out in the summer. So we usually go out and harvest burdock. Usually by March, we're out there, March, April, depending on where you live and how you can work the soil, because it can be tough to dig into any taproot. So, but always with the biennials, you want to kind of do it just as they're coming up in what we would consider their second year.
Okay.
It is gobo. It's slightly different, but they can be used the same way, Cindy. They have almost identical taste. It tastes the same.
Sorry, I missed the question. Did you answer that
He
question
was
about?
asking about gobo. Are the gobo the
Oh,
Japanese
okay.
use and we use the same? They cultivate it, so it's larger. It tends to be larger. It's kind of like, how that works with things. We like things bigger and better. Well, so that's what's happened.
Okay, great. So another question about St. John's wort. This is new to me, actually. This is one thing I love about my job is there's so many plants and there's always something to learn. So asking if you're familiar with Western St. John's wort. And if you look at the chat, it gives the Latin name there, 'cause sometimes that's easier
I
to
didn't.
distinguish.
Okay, let me find that.
If you go into the chat and scroll
Yeah.
up, my Latin pronunciation isn't amazing, so if you can read it. So it's a native St. John's wort, and have medicinal qualities of that been looked into, especially in comparison with the invasive St. John's wort? Do you know anything about
Absolutely
that?
not. No, they're really bad for that. They focus on one plant they consider to have medicinal qualities. And it will often depend on where it comes from. When we're talking about Western St. John's wort, we are talking about a St. John's wort that grew here. And most of the research is either done on plants in Europe or plants in China or that kind of thing. So I've not heard any research on that particular plant, but that doesn't mean that it wouldn't work the same way. I do know that most of the cultivated ones that we see in gardens and stuff like that, they're larger. They don't have the same medicinal value at all. I'm not familiar with this particular plant, but I'm quite happy to do some research and see if I can find out. And Lori can send that out, I
Yeah,
guess.
okay, sounds good. I can answer the next question. So we have someone battling knapweed, not uncommon in the
Mm.
Kootenays. So to answer your question, Kat, yes, it only does reproduce by seed. So right now is a great time to go and get it before it goes to seed. It is a biannual. Yes, you'll be digging it out. Don't give up, like I said, because it's one of these things that because of the seed bank, because you dig it out, it still has seed bank and it when you sometimes disturb soil, it can kind of encourage that seed to grow. So one thing that we've been seeing, I don't know how big the area is, but you can essentially solarize an area if need be, which like you basically dig an area around, put down some plastic, let it bake in the sun, in the fall pull it up, and then we recommend trying to cover up that disturbed bare soil. So mulching it. You can go collect a really awesome seed to go collect in the fall and reseed is goldenrod. It's a native species, but it's a prolific seed producer itself, and it's really easy to propagate, and that would definitely help outcompete some of that knapweed. So don't give up. It does produce lots of seeds. It does have a long seed bank, but repetitive hand pulling does work, and then trying to create some competition in there and trying to cover up that ground cover is what I'd recommend for knapweed. And the really good news is there is biocontrol agents for it. So believe it or not, the knapweed situation would be a lot worse if it wasn't for some biocontrol. So that is double club considered invasive? No, it's native.
And it's wonderful. We
Yeah.
love it. Except for when you have to harvest it. We're not quite so thrilled about it.
Okay. And
You wear gauntlets and a heavy coat so you don't get like totally whacked out.
yeah. Um, Is there a site or app that shows where some are? I've been trying to get seeds, but mine haven't sprouted. So yeah, that's where iNaturalist is really good. It's a citizen scientist tool. So iNaturalist reports any sightings of things. So you could go on iNaturalist and look where other people have been spotting it. Um, do you know if invasive scentless chamomile is the kind that is used in tea? And if so, is just the flower harvested and dried? Do you know the answer to that?
No, the scentless one unfortunately isn't medicinal and it won't have any flavor in your tea other than kind of a grassy. It's not particularly nice tasting. It's not horrible, but unfortunately it's not the one. You'd be wiser to get its cousin, which is the little ones that grow and look like if you squeeze them, they smell like pineapple a little bit, appley pineapple. And they have just that kind of pineapple cone on the top of them. They often go in disturbed soils, like they like driveways and things like that. And they're really beautiful. That's the pineapple chamomile, and they taste good, and they are mild as they're just a little less effective than the one you would grow normally. So unfortunately, I do wish the scentless, because it's everywhere. It would be really nice if it was medicinal, but it's not.
Okay. Okay, so it looks like there's no more questions. So thank you again, everyone, for coming out to this today, and hopefully we'll be able to catch maybe the last of the hockey if we need to. So if you enjoyed this virtual learning opportunity, just know that this is part of a three-part series. So my colleagues up at the Columbia Shoe Shop are offering a crafting tinctures and salves online learning opportunity on July 2nd. And then on August 6th, my colleagues in the East Kootenays are hosting a problem plants to paper workshop of another kind of neat way to go out and harvest some plants and repurpose them. So I'll send you the links to those workshops that you can also attend. You don't have to necessarily be in their region. And a big thank you to our funders who make these education events possible. So a big thank you to Columbia Basin Trust. We couldn't do the work we do without their support. And once again, thank you to Rachel. And everyone look in your inbox for a follow-up email with the recording. Feel free to share with your friends. And I really appreciate everyone coming out to the event tonight. So have a lovely evening and happy responsible harvesting to everyone out there. Have a great night.